Proper grip is imperative to proper cutting technique. If the grip is not correct, then you're going to have a very difficult time getting a straight line on your cut. So what we're going to express and address right now is how to actually approach the handle or the tsuka with your hands as you come at it. The tsuka is slightly curved, just as the sword is slightly curved. There are diamonds that are created by the wrap on the handle itself. We take the left hand and we place it from the back side of the sword toward the handle. The knuckles will be in line with the diamonds. The right hand approaches from the top and is at least 1 finger width from the sword guard itself, the tsuba. So we never want to have the hand tight against the tsuba. We want at least 1 inch to 1.5 inches away. Notice my hands are not wrapped in from the sides, the thumbs are not on top. We're always gripping the sword like we can grip it with 2 hands and support it with the palm of the hand. And gripping. As we come from an overhead, the arms are in line, the wrist bone, the top of the wrist is in line with the wrist bone on the left side. So we don't want to grip from the side, we want to grip from the top. Any good swordsman is familiar with his tools, and his tools in this case happen to be the samurai sword itself, the katana. So what I'd like to go over right now are different parts of the katana so that you will recognize those terms and parts of the sword as we go through the rest of the DVD. So if we can take a look at the sword itself, the entire sword is referred to as a katana. Starting with the handle end, the handles are referred to as the tsuka. The tsuka has an end to it, a small butt cap that's called the tsukagashira, or the end cap. The wrapping is called the tsukamaki, or sometimes they're referred to as ito, which is the actual cord that wraps around it. Inside, you'll notice there is black ray skin on this particular sword. Sometimes it's white ray skin. That's called same. The pegs that hold the handle onto the blade itself are called mekugi. Mekugi. And you're always going to check mekugi before you use it. Make sure that they're tight. Make sure they're not brittle or used or loose. The handguard is referred to as the tsuba. The scabbard is known as the saya. The end of the saya is referred to as a kojiri. There's a small knob on the saya that we refer to as the kurigata. And the kurigata, within the kurigata is attached a string. It's a braided piece of material we refer to as sageo. So the entire sword with the saya, the tsuka, the tsuba is referred to as a katana. If we remove the saya and take a look at the sword itself, you'll notice we have a small collar in this position, just forward of the tsuba. The collar is referred to as the habaki. And just behind the tsuba, we have a fuchi. The entire sword of and by itself, without the tsuba on it, or the habaki, or the tsuka, it's called the toshin. The cutting edge is referred to as the ha. The back edge is referred to as the mine, sometimes referred to as mune. You'll notice there's a raised section through the middle of the sword, running from the base all the way to the tip. That's called the shinogi. It's a raised edge, and many times you're going to be using the shinogi to do your blocking or deflecting with. Behind the shinogi, and on this particular sword, is a small ditch that runs the entire length of the sword, and that is called bohi. The very tip, the curved edge, the entire area is called kisaki, and the curved edge itself is known as the hoshi. Sometimes we use the hoshi to cut. but most of the time we use the cutting edge that goes from a slight line called the yokote that separates the sword from the kisaki back to about 9 inches behind. This area from here to here, from the 9-inch mark up to the yokote, is called the monouchi. There's a cloudy line that runs just along the edge, and that's referred to as the hamon. If you understand these parts of the sword, it's very easy to understand sword technique and how and why the sword works. The basic curvature of the sword, for our express purposes in iaido or bato jutsu, is it has a general curve to it which we call sori. So there's a general curve that makes an arch. And for iai jutsu or bato jutsu, the perfect curvature, the most curvature is in the very, very center of the sword. So as you continue to learn your sword technique, it's important that you learn a little bit more about the sword. Make sure you have a good cleaning kit so that you can take care of the sword, maintain it, and enjoy your swordsmanship. And a good sword like that will last a lifetime. Targeting is very important when you're performing samurai swordsmanship. It's not enough to be able to perform a cut. It's not enough to be able to perform a waza or a kata, but it's very important that you use the proper placement of the blade on the body in order to perform that cut. Otherwise, it's going to be ineffective or less effective than it could be. So what we'd like to do right now is demonstrate for you different targeting areas of the body that we use for specific cuts. Starting off, the first cut obviously is a downward cut, and we use what we call the men, or the head, is a direct straight cut down the center line of the body. The sword travels outward, and we use the monouchi, the last 9 inches of the blade, to deliver the cut. You don't want to be too shallow, but we want to get enough of the blade in use so that it can cut through. The second cut we're going to use is a yokomen cut. Yoko means side, the men means head, so we're cutting to the side of the head, targeting normally near the temple area. You can go left side or right side as your cut. The next cut on the way down is a keisa cut. The keisa cuts and follows the line of a monk's robe. Or as you see, I'm wearing a monsuki, or a formal robe. We're cutting down along the line of that robe as a kimono as it follows down. So it starts at the neck, keisa cut starts at the neck and follows the line to the opposite hip. Delivering the cut can be delivered with the monouchi or the kisaki. The kisaki can also cut through the body, as well as using the monouchi to cut a little deeper. We can cut a keisa from my left shoulder to my right hip, or we can cut a keisa from my right shoulder to my left hip. We can also cut in the opposite direction. We can do a return cut. On a return cut, a rising cut or a kiriage, we cut starting at the hip, and rather than using a keisa, we actually go a little bit further toward the shoulder blade. So we don't really exit the neck area, but the keisa starts here and exits near the point and peak of the shoulder, cutting diagonally up, right side, then diagonally up the opposite direction, starting at the hip and exiting the shoulder blade. The next cut is a do cut. Do means the main portion of the body, and this can be done from the front or from the back, sometimes cutting behind the shoulder blade or to either side. Yoko, which is a sideways cut, sometimes referred to as suihei. Suihei and yoko are the exact same cut. It's a very flat cut, or an angular cut as to the body. Right to left, straight through the body, or left to right through the body. Sometimes diagonally through the body from this position. That's still considered a do cut. The other cutting targets are on the extremities. What we refer to as the wrist is known as the kote. So sometimes as I hold a sword, my kote is exposed, particularly my right kote, because it's always forward as I hold the sword. So the kote can be cut in this position. Sometimes the kote is cut in this position. So that is a kote cut. The other cut is a hiza. Hiza is the knee. Sometimes as I perform a hasso no kamae or a jodan no kamae or a wakigamai, obviously the closest target to the opponent is the knee area, and he cuts low to that area. Those are the primary targets in Bato Jutsu or Bato Do. Make sure that as you're performing your waza, as you're performing your kumitachi techniques, your two-man drills, that you are specifically going for those targets to be more effective with your cuts. Proper grip is imperative to proper cutting technique. If the grip is not correct, then you're going to have a very difficult time getting a straight line on your cut. So what we're going to express and address right now is how to actually approach the handle or the tsuka with your hands as you come at it. The tsuka bone, the top of the wrist, is in line with the wrist bone on the left side. So we don't want to grip from the side, we want to grip from the top. Any good swordsman is familiar with his tools, and his tools in from the sides, the thumbs are not on top. We're always gripping the sword like we can grip it with two hands and support it with the palm of the hand. And gripping. As we come from an overhead, the arms are in line, the wrist, the knuckles will be in line with the diamonds. The right hand approaches from the top and is at least 1 finger width from the sword guard itself, the tsuba. So we never want to have the hand tight against the tsuba. We want at least 1 inch to 1.5 inches away. Notice my hands are not wrapped. It is slightly curved, just as the sword is slightly curved. There are diamonds that are created by the wrap on the handle itself. We take the left hand and we place it from the back side of the sword toward the handle.